webinar stays on the webinar, but how effective do you feel the performance evaluation process is? And it's going to show up in your poll box. You may say very effective, somewhat effective, not effective at all. Just go ahead, yours. But I want to talk about, before we get into the process, let's talk about what the evaluation is. Regardless of whether monthly, quarterly, annually, whether it's an informal or a formal process, it truly boils down to one aspect. You're inspecting what you expect. What I mean by that is everyone has expectations. Everyone has standards that they have to meet within the company. By reviewing that in a formal setting via the performance evaluation, you're able to give feedback to your employee. Are they on the right track? Are they making the right strides? Or is there some areas where they need to work towards? No matter what, this is what we see. We see that either employees dread them or employers hate them, and typically only 3% of organizations worldwide feel that the performance evaluation is effective in 2013. And looking at the poll, I see that about 85%, 86% of you somewhat agree that it's okay, it's kind of effective, but it's not very effective or it's not effective at all. And that's what we want to talk about today. We're going to talk about what the ultimate goal of the performance evaluation is. And the ultimate goal is to talk about with your employees what they've done, what they haven't done, and to ultimately development and also to get their buy-in. I'm on the right track. I'm still in my Thank you very much. Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties. I was muted for a moment, but we're back on track. As I said, we are Adobe Connect, so I thank you in advance for your patience as we use this. Okay, so today, what are we going to be about? We're going to talk about the 5 steps and how they're applicable. And the next question that I have is, how often do you conduct performance evaluations? And I'm talking about formal sit down with an employee, something in writing performance evaluation. Do you conduct them monthly, maybe quarterly or annually? Maybe you're one of our companies that never do it at all. Go ahead and choose what you want and how you do that. And that's going to give me an indication of whether I need to address this as something that you do annually or break it down to how you can implement the processes quarterly. Regardless of when you do it, and it seems that about 81% of you, we're still voting, conduct annual performance evaluations, the steps that we're going to talk are going to be applicable no matter how often you conduct formal evaluations. We're going to talk about 5 steps for the process. We're going to talk about common mistakes and give you some tools and some resources on how to avoid that. When we talk about this, and we've had this question, well, why is Omnia presenting performance evaluations? Aren't you typically a selection tool? The answer to that is no. While we offer you information about natural behavioral traits through our profile, we're also able here to support you for consulting. And we feel that performance evaluations is the first step to it. Let's talk about this. So about 83% of you conduct annual performance evaluations. And as I said, these are the formal sit-down evaluations, the one that everyone hates, everyone dreads. I don't have time for this. It always leads to a big argument. What are we going to do about it? Why even do evaluations? Be realistic. What do they accomplish? Well, why evaluate? 1, you want to review the previous period's performance. What did they do in the past? Past performances are a good indication of future behaviors. You want to set those objections and expectations for the new period. Think of your performance rest stops along the way so that they can check in. Am I doing well? Am I not doing well? You can talk about developing individual strengths and challenges, how you as a manager, as a supervisor, can give resources to those employees. And then career development. Everyone wants to develop within their career, whether they stay in the same position or they're moving forward. There's always that constant development. There's new information to be gathered, new facts. The evaluation will help you give some of that. So every evaluation always comes with a big surprise. While there shouldn't be, if you're following these processes that we're going to talk about, there always is. So your poor performers tend to self-evaluate high. Your supervisor evaluates low because you're seeing the performance. The big surprise to unpleasant supervisors is that there's a disconnect between what the supervisor thinks and what they think. It's an unpleasant surprise. And that can equal a difficult performance evaluation. Some people will say, well, it could lead to robust discussion, defensiveness, sensitivity, and a poor perspective from the employee. Not to mention from the supervisor side of things, a dread to talk about it. The big surprise for high performers is that they tend to self-evaluate low. It's part of my job. Why am I adding that information? Whereas the supervisors tend to evaluate high. They see the big picture. What someone may consider as part of their job, assisting their clients, the supervisor knows that goes above and beyond. So your high performers tend to be pleasantly surprised when they receive their evaluation, because it equals a good performance evaluation. And if you're keeping proper notes, you may remind the performer of something that they did that they've completely forgotten about. There's always a disconnect. How can you avoid it? Well, 5 steps to a successful evaluation process are prepare, plan, putting the pen to paper, communicate, and follow up. And we're going to talk about those steps as we go along and more in depth, but here's the key to it. You have to apply them. We can give you the information, but if you do not apply it, it's not going to assist. So let's talk about that first step of prepare. And yes, prepare, prepare, prepare. Think of it like real estate. Location, location, location. Let's go ahead and one more question. The average supervisor recalls how many days of work performance? 10 to 15, 30 to 45, 60 to 90, or they've got that mind of an elephant and they can remember every single day of everyone's performances. We're going to pop that question up, and as we do, go ahead and mark what you think, and let's talk about preparation. Why do we prepare, and how can we prepare? Well, one, preparation needs to happen throughout the year, and think of it as the 3 C's. Consistent, continuous, and coaching. When I say consistent, you have to apply the same preparation for the performance evaluation to every employee. Now, just as you don't communicate with every employee the same way, because some people want high praise and general praise, and some people want very job-specific feedback, you have to consistently talk about that. It has to be continuous. You cannot prepare for a performance evaluation the day before you have to write it. Use it throughout the year. Let's think about it. Let's gather facts. And then coaching. If you're coaching either informally or formally throughout the year, you've got a great tool and resource for the performance evaluation. At Omnia, we offer the Employee Coaching Companion. It allows the supervisor to talk with an employee, to coach them, to look for some what we call as did wells, 2 or 3 things that they've done excellent, offer some next time where they feedback on something that they can improve on, but file those. Don't put them away and never refer back to them. Look at them when you're coaching. Also look at them when it comes to performance evaluation. The reason why we recommend that is that the average supervisor recalls about 60 to 90 days of work performance. Now, the majority of you thought it was 10 to 15 or 30 to 45 days. What we've discovered is that that number of days decreases, A, if there's not anything outstanding during that time frame. Nothing that, whether positive or negative, that catches that supervisor's attention. In addition, the number of days that are recalled also depends on daily interaction and number of employees that they supervise. If you're in a small office that has 3 to 4 people in it, it's very easy to have that daily interaction. You're able to observe what your employees are doing. It's easier to remember. However, if you manage a team of 10, 20, 50, 100, you don't have that constant daily interaction, or maybe there's an additional level of supervisor. There's a team lead that they handle the day-to-days, but they don't handle the performance evaluation. What you recall about them is going to be lower. And this is when we say prepare throughout the year for the performance evaluation. If you're on average remembering 60 to 90 days, that's the last 3 months before the performance evaluation period is over with. So if you have an outstanding employee who did excellent for 9 months, and then they have 2 or 3 months where they've made mistakes, maybe they've transitioned to a new job, you've seen their productivity decline, that's what you're going to remember. And vice versa. If you've had someone who had some issues with performing during the first 9 months, and maybe you've done some disciplinary actions and some coaching plans, and you finally said, okay, you've got 90 days. You're on probation for 90 days. And if you don't correct these actions, you're no longer going to have a job with our company, and they've completely turned around. Then all you're going to remember is their best behaviors. Document, document, document. Make notes. Doesn't have to be anything elaborate, and make sure that it's consistent with the good and areas for improvement. Could be a file. I've gotten a customer compliment. I'm putting it in Carrie's file. I've got a customer complaint. I'm going to put it regarding Kim. I'm going to put it in her email folder. I've gotten some peer feedback. Oh, they did great on this project. They completed it 4 days in advance. Let me type a quick note and put it in email. It's going to give you something to refer back to. Now, here's a word of caution. Anything that you put in writing, whether it's in a handwritten or it's in an email form, can become part of legal proceedings if it's subpoenaed. So you want to make sure that you're only writing down facts. Don't put their attitude stinks. I don't like them. And that's going to cause some issues. But you can say they were late 4 times in a 30-day period. That's a fact. It's something that's very objective, and that's where you want to go with this. Okay. So we talked about preparing, and as I said, we see the average supervisor recalls about 60 to 90 days. The mistake number 1 that we see is that people rely on their memories. Making sure that you don't rely on your memory to complete the evaluation is absolutely key. And the other thing that's key is during the preparation process is self-evaluations. Self-evaluations involve responsibilities from both the supervisor and the employee. Now, what's the supervisor's responsibilities? 1 is to send out the evaluation to the employee 2 to 4 weeks in advance. Do not send them the self-evaluation and say, I need it in 2 hours so I complete your evaluation that was due yesterday. Give them time to think. Give the employee a deadline to return the self-evaluation. Number 3 is key. Read the self-evaluation. It's going to give you great feedback. It's going to tell you what the employee thinks that they've done well, where they may have missed the mark. It's going to let you know, A, are you and the employee on the same path? It's also going to give you some ideas of what they're saying they want as resources, so that when you have that formal sit-down conversation with the employee, you can have some of those resources available. And that's what leads into point 4 is be prepared to discuss it. The employee's responsibility is to complete the self-evaluation within the designated frame. And if they don't, that could be a perfect example if they have some difficulties with follow-up. And it's a recent example. You missed this deadline. The employee also needs to be open and honest and give examples and facts, not opinions. I'm doing a great job with customer service. How can you, and they may well be, but how can they support that? And then they have to be prepared to discuss their self-evaluation with the supervisor during the evaluation time. And keeping it open and honest. Now, self-evaluations don't have to be something completely different than the employee performance evaluation. Here at Omnia, we actually use the same form that the supervisors complete, that employees complete for the self-appraisal. It has a couple of things that benefits to that. One is that it's apples to apples. The employee can answer the same questions that the supervisor is. After the supervisor reads it, they can actually tailor in and bring in some of that information as well as they're giving examples. In addition, it allows the employee to see what they're being reviewed on. You may have a self-appraisal form that's different, and that's okay. It's all about what's best for your company. We're offering you some resources and some tools. Whether you use the same form or you use a different form, the important part is that you're using the form and you're giving sufficient time for the employee to continue it. In addition to that, the next step is you want to plan for success. I love that picture. Determination. One, planning for success is scheduling that time. Scheduling time
to dial the number to which long-distance charges apply.
To write the evaluation, don't wait until the last moment. When you wait to the last minute to complete a self-evaluation or it's late, a performance evaluation, or it's late, you're telling the employee that their contribution to the company doesn't matter. It affects team morale. And it can be difficult, especially if you work for a company that you do all of your performance evaluations at the same time. It's going to take preparation, and it's going to take planning. You also want to schedule time to review the evaluation with the employee, making sure that you're careful when you're scheduling it so that you don't stress them out. But also, once again, by reviewing that evaluation and scheduling that time and planning that time in advance, you're allowing them to clear their calendar and you're telling them, I've set aside time to help you be successful. Mistake number 2 that we see a lot. Rushing through the writing process. So I won't ask for a show of hands for this, but how many of you during your time frame as supervisor has gone, oh, I completely forgot. I have this performance evaluation due at 5 o'clock. Here, I'll just schedule it in and rush through it, and I can handle, I've got a 2 o'clock client call and a 3 o'clock meeting, but I should have about 5 minutes. I can squeeze it in there. Let me rush through it. Don't do that. Because when you rush through it, 1, your employee knows that you've rushed through it. And 2, while you may think that you're multitasking for my fast-paced participants out there, you're actually slowing yourself down. By scheduling that time, pulling that information together, preparing it, and then taking the time, whether it's 30 minutes, whether it's an hour, whether it's 15 minutes, you're able to write clearly, concisely. You're able to edit it and make sure that it is absolutely perfect information. Mistake number 3 that we see is inconsistent scheduling. Once again, it goes back to what are we telling our employees? Hey, have you got 5 minutes? I just want to run through your evaluation with you. Well, if you're only discussing it with me for 5 minutes, either it's really good or really bad, or typically the perception is it doesn't matter to you. Just give it to me and I'll read it and give you feedback. And if you do that, please stop. This is a scheduled time that you can sit with your employee. Also, when you're scheduling, it's key to look at the timing. If you know you have someone who always dreads the performance evaluation process, don't tell them Friday at 2 o'clock, hey, I want to talk to you Monday at 9 to go over your review with you. Guarantee you're going to have some weekend worrying going on. You want to give them that time to plan it. Also, by scheduling it in advance and keeping to that time without constant rescheduling, you're letting that employee be prepared with what they're coming to say as well. So step 3 is pen to paper. And whether you actually do a physical pen to paper and write it out, or whether you use the computer, it's all the same thing. There's some do's and don'ts involved with it. So some of the do's, you want to make sure that you're addressing behaviors that you want to stop, start, and continue. You want it to be a very balanced evaluation. Remember, it's a review and an expectation. What do you want them to stop? During this 12-month period, you were late 14 times. That's the behavior you want to stop. As we begin this new evaluation period, we would like you to increase your accuracy rate from 40% to 80%. And what you want them to continue. Carrie received a client survey satisfaction score of 80%. That surpassed the objective of 75%. You want to use examples of strengths and challenges. Let them know what they've done well, what are some areas of development, and use the third person. And this is important. When you're writing an evaluation, write it for the supervisor or manager that's coming behind you. You want to make sure that whoever's reading it, think of it as a novel. Think of it as a short story. Use the person's name versus you. Also, by using the third person, you're avoiding the very first don't, which is making it personal. When you say you, it's taken very personally. You missed your sales goal. You're late. You had a client complaint. Automatic reaction for some employees could be defensiveness. Well, I didn't reach my sales goal because we had this issue. Or I had this customer complaint because I took over someone else's problem. By keeping it in the third person, you're keeping it very objective and you're not making it personal. Also, when you're writing the evaluation, don't give unbalanced feedback. Remember, strengths, challenges. What did the employee do well? And you want them to continue, and what are some areas of development? You don't want an unbalanced evaluation that says, hey, you're great and we love everything that you're doing, because no one's perfect and there's always room for improvement. At the same time, you don't want the evaluation that says you did this, 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 and this wrong, and have the employee walking away with, well, why am I even here if all they do is think that I make mistakes? Also, don't speak in generalities and absolutes. You don't want to say you never have a client-customer complaint. You always make mistakes, because that is not giving them feedback. It's not giving them specific feedback. And let's face it, typically absolutes are not absolutely correct. And that employee is going to be able to give you an example of where your absolute is wrong. Also, we're going to talk about agree or disagree. So kind of a reinforcement, taking your attention back to your icon, you have agree and disagree. I'm going to put up a couple of statements, and I want you to agree if they are a pen to paper do, and I want you to disagree if you think it's a pen to paper don't. Something that should be in a performance evaluation, agree. Something that should not, disagree. Okay, let's get started. You are always late. By show of hands, agree or disagree. Do you agree or disagree that that is a good statement?
Late, disagree.
Right. It's absolute.
A generality.
Okay. Very good. And I heard someone say it is a generality. It's a generality, it's an absolute, and it also uses you, so it makes it a little bit more personal. Let's move on to the next one. Go ahead and clear your status. Remember, agree if you think it's a do, and disagree if you think it's a don't. You did not reach your sales goal. Do you agree or disagree? And I'm seeing of agrees and disagrees, and let's talk about this one. While you do want to address if someone did not reach their sales goal, remember using the word you makes it personal. So write in third person, and you may rephrase that to say something like, Kim achieved 80% of her sales goal. 80% is a fact that cannot be disputed. Kim was only 50% to her sales goal. So you're still stating the fact, but you're doing it in a way that can't be argued with. It's very objective, and it's that third person as well. Okay, go ahead and clear, and let's take on the next one. Okay. Steve has a 98% accuracy rate. Agree or disagree? Great. That is absolutely an agree. You want that's clear, it's objective, it's fact-based, and it's third party. 4, you have a bad attitude. Agree or disagree that this should be something, should be put on there. Disagree. Definitely bad attitude, very much a perspective. And you want to make sure that you talk about, don't use general. Bad attitude automatically equals defense. You want to make sure that you're saying, and if it's an attitude, address what the behavior is that's causing you to think that they have a bad attitude. For example, someone never responds in a timely manner. And when you ask it for them, they get defensive. Instead of addressing the defensiveness, you may say, Kim has missed X number of deadlines. And one of the questions that we've just popped up is, how do you make these statements without using the word you? You can use the person's name, or she, or if it's a male, he. He missed his goal by 50%. Nicole has a client retention rate of 80%. She received 5 client compliments throughout this review period. And then when you're talking about it during the verbal discussion, we'll address that when we hit to communication, but when you have that out there, you can talk about it. This is what we observed, and this is what I wrote. Nicole had a 90% client retention rate. And this is what I observed in some examples of how you did it. But we'll talk about verbal in a few moments. We've got one more. Agree or disagree? Jane generated $250,000 in revenue. Agree or disagree? Okay. Definitely an agree. You've given them exactly a dollar, a fact, a quantifiable measurement. Excellent. Okay. So we've talked about pen to paper, but let's talk about the next step. Because everything that I've given you so far, preparing, planning, pen to paper, is all done before talking to the employee. So let's talk a little bit about that communication, and it's key. Preparing and understanding and having that information in advance is going to help you prepare to talk with the employee. First thing, you always want to make sure that you have a copy of the evaluation and the self-appraisal for both people. You want to talk to them, and it's easy to read. You want to go over every point during that conversation. But before you even look at what's on the paper, look at your office and tell me, what does your nonverbal environment say to your employee? What I mean by that is, are you trying to squeeze them in between customers calling and emails popping up? If you know you're easily distracted, put your phone on D&D. Go ahead and Control-Alt-Delete your computer so you don't see those emails. If you keep your cell phone out because you have clients calling you, put it away so it's not a distraction. Does your office have papers that are threatening to fall on the employee at any given moment? Clear off a clear workspace, because what you're telling them is, this is important to me. I want to invest in your past performance and your future performance. And then it's all about perception, perception, perception. If you go, here's your evaluation, read it, well, then you're downplaying what their time that they've given and what you've done. So by reading it and going point to point, so this is what the core values are. This is what they measure. Here's what I wrote. Now let's talk about this a little bit. So you generated $250,000 in revenue. Your goal was $275,000. You didn't quite make it. So here's an area of development that I see for you. And it opens that dialogue. Or I noticed that on your self-appraisal, you rated yourself this, and I rate as it exceeds, and I rated you a meet. Let's have a discussion about that. Keep in mind that when you sit down with your employee, it needs to be a two-way street. Communication is two ways. You need to give them information, allow them to process it, and then give you feedback. Because without that, if you rush through it, you don't get that feedback. You may miss something. And if you miss it, that's going to lead to mistake number 4. It is what it is, and I'm not changing it. We're human, and the employee is human. And by having that conversation, going back and forth, and after you've read it and you discuss it with them, and they may give you examples that you've either forgotten about or you had no idea about. And when you're listening to them and you go, you're right, you did exceed in this expectation. Let me go ahead and change that. But that should be the exception to the rule, not a best practice. Performance evaluations are not negotiations, and keep that in mind. It's not, well, I think this, you think that, let's come to a compromise, but it is truly listening, and if it's something that has merit, then you can change it. You have to be open with that information. Once you've communicated the actual past performance evaluation, the next thing that you want to do is objectives and goals. Remember, the performance evaluation is past periods performance review and setting expectations for the next period. And I love this because it says, the supervisor says, okay, it is decided, objective is 0% waste. You're in charge and you have 8 days. For some of my managers who are really fast-paced and love, to set high goals and aggressive goals and they want to get there yesterday, you're thinking that's doable. What's the problem with that? But if you have an employee who is not that way, who's more process-oriented, who wants to gather the facts and make sure everything's perfect, you can demotivate them. So as you're setting those objectives and goals, get feedback. This is where that dialogue comes in. Let's talk about it. What's working, what's not working, what are some of the resources I can provide you? By having the employee make the objectives with you, when possible, some of them they can't. If they've got to sell $250,000 a year and that's a set company goal, it is what it is. But how can I give you resources to get there? Also, as part of it, one of the most common ways to set goals is by using the SMART goals. How do you measure it? Is it a specific goal? Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Is it relevant? And is it time-bound? And when we say measurable and achievable, is it realistically achievable? I might want to increase sales by 40%, but is it realistic? And your job as a supervisor, as you're communicating as part of this performance evaluation and setting this roadmap for the next evaluation period, is to make sure that it is achievable. Because if not, we're setting our employees up for failure. And it takes it right back to that big surprise and opens the possibility, well, if you knew I couldn't reach that goal, why'd you let me set it? And it's a partnership. So you want to offer guidance when they're creating objectives. The other thing that you want to do is allow the employee to give feedback. And during that discussion, back and forth, that's great feedback, but you may also have some employees who want to take the evaluation, they want to read it, and write comments. Most evaluations allow the employee to write comments on it. And here's why it's so important to have 2 copies. Give them the opportunity with a time frame. We've discussed it. I want to give you until tomorrow at noon to make any comments that you want to make, and I need it back and signed. 9 times out of 10, you may have the employees will say, I don't need to think about it. I agree with it, and I'm fine, and sign it right then. But some people want to talk and think about it, and if that's the case, allow them to have that opportunity. The other thing is, by a show of hands, agree or disagree. Do you think the evaluation process is completed once the evaluation form is done? You've written it, you've discussed it, now I've sent it to HR. Shoo, I'm finished. Agree or disagree? We have a lot of disagrees. Absolutely correct. I disagree with that. The reason for that is, remember, taking it right back to preparation. So if you're preparing and you're planning and you're gathering information, while that evaluation is completed for that time period and it's the raise or the increase has been taken care of, HR has it, you want to make sure that you keep a copy because the evaluation process is never finished. You want to check back in as you're coaching. What did I tell them? What did I promise them for resources? What are some of their goals? How can we assist? Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. Check in at least quarterly with the employee to see how they're doing. And to help you with that, you want to use certain things. Coaching companions, making sure you're keeping notes of it. You may have e-learning. With Omnia, I am excited to say, and this is a sneak peek, we have a new division that is coming by the start of the second quarter of soft skills e-learning. Maybe you want that e-learning to learn, how can I get performance evaluations? How can I improve on that? Maybe your employee has some skills that they need to learn, or that you have a new manager. We're going to be able to offer that e-learning available to you. Now, I'm going to thank you very much for your time. I want to open it up for the last few minutes that we have to answer any questions that you may have. So if you want to go ahead and type in your questions to the chat box, Carrie, who is our fabulous marketing specialist who sent out the information, will also assist with making sure that those questions are answered. So go ahead. And while you're doing that, I do want to remind you that we did record the webinar, so if you want to have someone else take a look at it, you can listen to it. We will send out notifications via Facebook and LinkedIn. And the slide presentations will be available as well. They will be available on our, Carrie, can you refresh my Google Docs?
Hey Kim, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, hi everyone. This is Carrie Bennick. I'm the marketing manager and I've been chatting with you all throughout our presentation today, and thank you so much for dealing with our audio issues. This is brand new to us, and we're just getting started. We've rolled out Lunch and Learn webinars for the whole year, and hopefully, sorry you all had to be the guinea pigs, but I think we'll have all the bugs worked out for next month. Kim, first, before I provide that link, I just want to paste up a question that Rosemarie had in the very beginning of the presentation. So I'm just going to paste it right in the chat box for you into your personal chat so you can see it okay, so you're not getting bombarded. And you should see it right now, Kim.
Okay. How do you handle the one employee who thinks they can sit in their personal email, websites, Facebook throughout the day thinking no one is watching but other employees are commenting about it? Do you give them 30 days to clean up their act, or what is recommended? It's definitely something that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed prior to the evaluation process. And this is a great question, Rosemary. Comes as part of that preparation stage with that coaching. And definitely you want to start talking with that employee. You want to give them feedback. You want to let them know and give them examples. If you have an IT department that can track Facebook and personal websites so that you have some facts to address with that. In addition, if it's something that is not being corrected, you want to look at putting them on a disciplinary plan. And I would suggest working with your HR department if you have one. By documenting it and preparing, you're going to be able to give them dates. This is when I've talked to them. This is what the response was. There hasn't been an improvement. And if it's something that's influencing the company and affecting productivity, then you may have to decide to let that employee go. Okay, how do you handle, great question, how do you handle employees that always try to deflect their performance evaluation by complaining about other coworkers? One, self-evaluation is perfect for that. And then you want to redirect the conversation to, we're here to discuss your performance. As we discuss your performance, as I'm talking to you about your performance, I talk to everybody individually about their performance. I can't help, what can you do to improve your performance? And then, but also listen to what they're saying. Is it truly a problem, or is it a case of shifting blame? And that's what you want to determine. If it's truly a problem and it's something that you need to address, then it refers back to the mistake number 5 is I can't change anything. But ultimately, we are responsible for our own behaviors. Okay. I have a specific recommendation on how often evaluations should occur. We currently do them annually. It is strictly up to the company when they conduct the evaluations. Here at Omnia, we do annual evaluations as well, but through monthly coaching and meetings, we're able to give feedback to those employees daily, monthly, and quarterly. If you conduct annual evaluations, my personal recommendation from past experience is to try to sit down with every employee at least quarterly as a check-in. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a long time, 10, 15 minutes to say, here are your goals. This is what you're doing. Here's where you're pathing for it. Here's where you're not pathing for it. What resources do you need? What are you doing to work towards it? And of course, if there's any type of corrective action that needs to be taken, go ahead and take it. Don't wait until the end of the year to conduct the evaluation. How do you address issues that you don't personally observe but are told about? Great question, and it depends on what the issue is. Sometimes it's just a conversation with someone to say, this is what I've heard, can we talk about it? And hear that employee side of the issue. Sometimes there are issues that are very black and white and some that are gray. And it may open it up to, is it an issue between coworkers and they need some conflict resolution? Or is it a hard fact? We saw this teller give money to someone else. And that's something that needs to be up, but it does need to be addressed. I would say consider the source when you're looking to address the issue. And then how you approach it is going to be very different. If you have hard facts that support what you didn't personally observe, then go from it from a fact base. If it's something that you've heard, you may want to just have a casual conversation to say, this is what I've heard, let's talk about it. We have time for a couple more questions. These are fabulous questions. As we're waiting, do you want to go ahead and point out on the left side of your screen? We do have the performance evaluation template that we use and a PDF in the Omnia Coaching Companion as well that's going to be available. And you can
Kim,
click
I
on
just
those
want
and
to
download them if you want.
I just want to chime in real quick. I put the link out for everybody to download the performance evaluation template, which is in a Word document. I cannot upload Word documents to Adobe Connect, so I put them on our Google Plus page. Everyone should have that. And the coaching companion template is not available in an editable format, but at the same time, it really is something that you kind of write on, so it might be easier for everyone just to print that out and use it.
Great, Carrie. And to tag on with the coaching companion, you want to write on it. As I said, the coaching can be informal or formal, but if you're watching a client interaction and you're carrying it with you, or you can make a couple of marks, checks on it, this you did well, here's something we need to discuss. Hey, Carrie, you got a couple of minutes? Just want to tell you, I observed you with this client, you did this, 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 and this well, and here's an area for opportunity. And give that feedback. And then you go back and you file it, but your employees are only going to get better if we're coaching them. Okay. How do you deal with everyone else when you have an employee that's on Facebook routinely and that other workers are also on Facebook? Great question. Goes back to preparation and consistency. If you have someone who's consistently on Facebook and other people are on Facebook, you can either do an all or nothing. There's no more Facebook, or you address their Facebook usage based on their productivity. Is that employee who's always on Facebook able to get their job done? Are they producing? If the answer is yes, they do everything that they need to do and then they're on Facebook, then that's when I would recommend is let's take a look at that employee and say, I've noticed you're on Facebook a lot and your productivity is where it needs to be. And because of that, and because you're able to get your job done, we're going to go ahead and give you some extra responsibilities. Because if she or he is completing their job task and have 2 hours to be on Facebook, then you might want to look at increasing their job responsibilities. You may have some people who are going to be self-starters that come to you and say, what can I do? I'm done. And you have other people who want to wait and be told, what do I need to do? Also, do you have a social media policy? That might be something that, if you don't have it, that you put it into place. The social media policy can address, one, what they put on their Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn about the company, but also can it limit the amount of time that they're on there as well. Now, going back to that example, if they're not hitting their goals and their work is suffering, then that's when you address their productivity. You're not meeting your goals, your productivity isn't where it needs to be. This is what we're seeing, that Facebook is interfering with your capacity to meet your job requirements. Either way, that's going to give you an idea. And if you don't have a social media policy and like a sample, let us know and we can add that as well. We have time for one more question. Anybody have a question? I do want to thank you very, very much for being a part of our first Adobe Connect 2014 webinar. I hope you found it beneficial. Looking forward to addressing other items as well and other topics. Omnia, if you are not familiar with what we do, I will let you know that we offer and partner with our clients to learn natural behavioral traits of top talent for selection, retention, and development. We also offer a wider range of tools that will help you develop your employees and also talk about your leadership style as well. If you have any questions, go out to our website, check it out, or you can email Carrie or myself. We'd be more than happy to talk to you about that information and provide some samples. And we will be providing the sample copy for the social media. PowerPoint presentation is not out as of yet, but it will be out. Carrie, can you let me kind of an estimated time of arrival for that?
PowerPoint presentation, probably about an hour. We'll have it up on that same link where the link I've been sending out for everyone for the evaluation template. So about an hour, the actual presentation will be up, and then tomorrow the on-demand video will be there as well. May everyone make sure, I know not everybody is on social media, but truly the easiest way to find out when we get these things live, the quickest way, if you could follow us either on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Google+, Twitter. That way, once I put it up, I can just blast everyone to let them know that it's available for their use.
Terrific.
I don't see any other questions, Kim.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending this past hour with Carrie and myself. I hope you found that information beneficial, and I look forward to talking to you next month on our next topic. Carrie, what is our topic for next month for our webinar?
Oh, no. I have to consult the calendar.
Kill me later. I will
What
go to our website.
It's what behavioral insight can really do for you.
Sorry?
It's February 13th, what behavioral insight can really do for you.
Wonderful. What behavioral insights can really do for you? Register early. We do have 100 participant maximum limit, and so the sooner you register, the sooner your spot is guaranteed for the webinar. Thank you once again for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day today.
Thanks, everyone.